Okay, welcome everyone. My name is Elizabeth Toomey. I am the team leader for the Central Problem Gambling Resource Center, and this is our last session of the night. Thank you for staying with us and joining us for retail investors and the next short squeeze. Without further ado, I'm going to turn it over to James and take it away, James.
Hi, thanks, Elizabeth. Elizabeth asked if I wanted her to read my introduction. And I said, it's always so weird to have someone read things about you when you're right there. So I thought I would just kind of say hi and introduce myself, as I've not presented at anything for New York before. So my name is James Syphax. I am in Columbus, Ohio right now. I work for an agency called Prevention Action Alliance. We are the state level prevention provider here in Ohio. I just entered my 10th year in the prevention field. I spent many years as a school-based prevention provider and quite a few years as a coalition coordinator for a prevention coalition outside of the Cincinnati area. With Prevention Action Alliance, I do a lot of work with our coalitions across the state. I work with our Lottery Commission and Casino Control Commission on the statewide problem gambling campaigns, which I will shamelessly plug at beforeyoubet.org and changethegameohio.org. And I have been doing seemingly a large number of presentations lately on things like retail investing and cryptocurrency and NFTs and all of these emerging trends. I'll tell you, I am also a chemical dependency counselor. I did work in treatment for a little while, but I was quickly reminded that prevention is for me. So don't hold that against me if you live in the treatment world. I briefly lived in that world also. So my time as a school-based prevention provider and even in treatment, I quickly realized that I didn't like to be caught unaware of emerging trends. I didn't want one of my middle school kids, I didn't want one of my clients, I didn't want someone coming to me and saying, hey, I've done this, or hey, have you heard of this? What do you think about this? And for me to be caught totally off guard. So I am a big emerging trends guy in substance use and in the problem gambling world. So that is kind of what has led me to become the crypto guy. I just presented for the Connecticut State Conference last week. I've actually presented for them a few times. I've done some work with Washington State, Illinois, North Carolina. And I say it's all kind of I call it my Forrest Gump moment. Right place, right time. I'm not an expert in technology. I'm not a finance expert. But if we look at the field of prevention, which in Ohio is pretty sizable, inside of that, we have the people that understand problem gambling services and problem gambling prevention. And inside of that smaller subset, we have people that are just nerdy enough to understand things like these retail investing platforms, cryptocurrency, and all of these other emerging trends. So that's where I live. So I am a prevention guy. And I'm going to ask, because I like to have a little interactivity, so I'm going to ask in the chat, tell me, how do you fit into the problem gambling services world? Are you a clinician? Are you a regulator? Are you a prevention specialist? I'm just going to watch them scroll by in the chat and get an idea for who's here. All right, we started with a couple prevention specialists and then we pretty quickly went into the clinical world. But I saw a couple more prevention people out there. So shout out to all my prevention people. So let's start. I'm going to share my screen and bear with me. I am presenting from home. Thank you all for joining so late in the day. I am beyond impressed with my colleagues in New York that they're able to put on such an appealing conference that we get this size of a crowd this late in the day. I was telling Elizabeth, I'm part of the planning committee for our state conference here in Ohio. And when we with a very enticing free meal in the middle of the conference. When we break 100, we're pretty excited. So shout out to New York for a great conference. All right, so let's talk about retail investing. And I'm going to ask again in the chat, and I'd encourage everybody just to keep the chat open because I like to keep it interactive. When I say retail investing, do you guys have a decent understanding what that is, what we're talking about? Because I like to do a thing, it's called ELI 5. And when we talk about Reddit and Wall Street Bets, and if you ever get on these sites, you'll see the acronym ELI 5, explain it like I'm 5. But if all of you know what I'm talking about or have some base level of understanding, I don't want to explain it like you're 5. I want to dig a little deeper. So I want to be respectful of your time and your existing knowledge. So if I say retail investing, do you know what I'm talking about? Yes or no? All right, I'm seeing lots of no's. I see one yes, a maybe. Robinhood, yeah, we're going to talk about that. Okay, no clue. Perfect. We're going to explain it like you're 5. Are we including the purchase of crypto through Venmo and other apps? Well, we're going to talk about crypto. We are definitely going to talk about NFTs for a little bit because I think that's part of this new world. We can hit on crypto just a little bit. We'll see, we'll kind of gauge what you guys know and how deep we go into that world. We do only have an hour, but we'll get through it together. We'll make the most of our time. So let's talk about retail investors. What is a retail investor? Also known as individual investors. These are non-professional investors. So people like us, if we started an investment account, day traders are usually lumped into the retail investing crowd. But in the hierarchy of investors that exist, you'll find that professional investors have a, dare I say, kind of inflated opinion of themselves as the professionals. And they kind of look down on retail investors, and somewhere in between are the day traders. They are viewed a little more favorably, but still not at that level of the professional trader or the professional investor. They invest smaller amounts than institutional investors. That's kind of a given. What I'm able to, and again, well, probably anyone in the room working in the treatment or prevention side, I don't have a whole lot of money to throw into investments. I don't have, let me rephrase that, I don't have a hedge fund level of money to throw into investments. I do okay. I've got a good retirement plan, which is considered retail investing, because I, as a lay person, I can log into my retirement plan, and I can change what I'm buying. I can change funds. I can make my own decisions. So technically, retirement accounts are considered retail investing. So we have less money. We don't bring what, say, Citadel, a hedge fund with billions and billions of dollars, brings to the table. So we're kind of the little guy. Statistically, retail investors are going to be drawn towards lower price per share stocks. That's starting to change a little bit because of apps like Robinhood, where we can actually buy fractional stocks. You know, if I want to buy a share of Tesla, but I don't have the whole amount, or I don't have enough money to buy one whole share, I can buy a partial share. So that stat is starting to shift a little bit in that retail investors are starting to buy into some higher priced stocks. And this, I think, is a kind of an interesting statistic, is that almost 15% of retail investors began in 2020. It's very interesting, there are some Twitter accounts that exist that will tell you every day how much your stimulus check would be if you, the day that they were distributed, bought Bitcoin. If you took your whole $1,200 or $600 stimulus check and you, the day they were dispersed, bought Bitcoin, every day they update you with how much money you would now have. It's gone up. You would have considerably more money. But we'll talk about how Twitter and groupthink kind of plays into some of these decision-making processes also. So a little more about retail investors. A great study just came out by Charles Schwab. They're calling it the Generation Investor Study. And it's for those of us that like stats and data, I will tell you there's not a whole lot of data around this population right now. So their study was based on 1,000 people. So statistically, not the most comprehensive study, but comparatively to what other data is out there, it's one of the best data sources that's available right now. So they're calling it Generation Investor, which they're referring to as the first generation of people to enter this kind of en masse, this retail investing market. It is a combination of other generations. So it's not by age, like we see, generations defined by Gen Z, Millennial, Gen X. It is everyone that started investing in 2020 to present is part of a Generation Investor. And we can see that Generation Investor is a little more optimistic about the stock market overall. They think the stock market will increase in value this year. And you can see that they are willing to invest more. They plan to invest more than the traditional, even the day traders and the people that were already doing some retail investing. They plan to invest more as we move forward. And this one I think is kind of important. They plan to spend more time managing their portfolio. So this is going from a passive activity to an active activity, something that you are going to see people, and there's another stat about how this is viewed as a source of income. So it's no longer a set it and forget it kind of activity. I don't know if I should be embarrassed to say this or not. I know about how much money I have in my retirement account. I don't know exactly what it's invested in. We're seeing people move away from that. We're seeing people spending time actively managing or actively watching their investments. So by actual generation, Generation Investor is made up 16% of Gen Z. Slightly over half of Generation Investor are millennials, which I fit into that crowd. I'm 37. I'm technically a millennial. I'm kind of the very end of Gen X, but the very beginning of millennials. We see about a quarter, 22% is Gen X, and 11% are the baby boomer population. So new to retail investing, a pretty wide swath of people. I'd encourage everybody to check out if you're interested in all the data points, and there's obviously more than I can share in an hour. Check out the Charles Schwab study. They have a lot more demographics and a wider breakdown of this data. What I think is interesting is that compared to those prior retail investors, people that started before 2020, Generation Investor averages about $20,000 a year less in salary. Now that is to say that the average income for a member of the Generation Investor group is about $76,000 a year. So I think statistically higher than most, but less than people that were investing before. Around half, 51% of the Generation Investor crowd lives paycheck to paycheck. And again, 53%, I know correlation is not causation, but if 51% are living paycheck to paycheck, 53% are citing these investments as an additional source of income. So again, not a set it and forget it, but an activity that they're going to actively be participating in. A look at just when we talk about retail investing, we can see that in 2010, about 10% of all order flow, basically all trades, was considered retail investment. So if we looked at trades as a whole, 10%, we're going to be me, you, our colleagues, our friends, our family, these individual investors. 2019, just prior to the start of Generation Investor, just under 15%. In 2020, we're up to just about 20%. I imagine once the 2021 data comes out, we will see, again, we'll see a lot of growth there. And someone mentioned Robinhood, and I think this is the one that we've probably all heard most about, as we've probably heard something about GameStop in January and everything that happened there, which we'll dig into. But a lot of people heard about Robinhood. We saw in 2018, they had about 6 million users, 2019 up to 10 million users, and in 2020, they had roughly 13 million users. Again, I suspect when 2021 data comes out, we'll see a large increase in the number of users there. You know, we talk about Robinhood, and it's kind of a, for anyone that's seen any marketing materials around Robinhood, or if you get any Facebook apps, because I assure you, if you Google investing or crypto or NFTs or any of these terms, immediately every ad you see on social media will be trying to get you to sign up for one of these services. So if you look at the marketing, it's considerably different than that of Fidelity, Schwab, and Vanguard. They're the three, I think 32, 30, and 29 million users each, respectively. We think of Fidelity, Schwab, Vanguard, we think of them as kind of the old guard when it comes to retail investing. That's where a lot of the day traders, a lot of the retirement accounts are going to be. And then we look at apps like Robinhood, Coinbase, if you're into crypto, or Webull. Those are the, I think those are the generation investor apps. Those are the ones that are driving new users. They're the ones that are actively marketing. If you look at whom they're marketing to a considerably different user base than Fidelity. I can tell you, I see here in Central Ohio, and I've started a tally of how many Fidelity commercials I see. They're all about retirement. They're all about a population, I would say they all feature consumers that are 50 plus, talking about retirement, shifting goals, talking about grandkids and those retirement activities. If you look at advertising for Robinhood, Webull, Coinbase, it's going to be people, I'm 37, it's people way younger than me. They are driving a new market, a new demographic to join the retail investor crowd. So I think we've kind of talked about what retail investing is. I think we know a little bit about who's doing it. Not to say that we've narrowed it down to any one demographic, because it is a pretty wide swath of people. But when we talk about retail investing, what has really brought that to light over the last year or so is GameStop. We are seeing it now with AMC. I don't know if anyone's familiar with the AMC stock and what's going on, but people are trying to recreate what happened with GameStop just about a year ago. And I think people are aware of GameStop and something happened, but they're not necessarily able to say what happened, other than it was kind of a frenzy. There was a lot of buying, there was a lot of selling. Some people made a lot of money, some people lost a lot of money. And what that was a short squeeze. So before we talk about that, again, we're going to explain it like I'm 5. We're going to talk about what short selling is. So short selling, and I'm going to use Elizabeth from the council as an example, because I had a chance to talk with her a little bit. So let's say Elizabeth is a broker. She owns a bunch of shares of stock, and I want to short sell. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to say, hey, Elizabeth, can I borrow 100 shares of stock? And right now that stock is worth $100 a share. So you let me borrow that, and I promise I'll pay it back. And she's going to say, sure. Yeah, I know you, I know you're good for it. So I'm going to borrow that stock. I am going to sell the stock, because right now it's worth $100 a share. And I'm going to sell it. I'm going to take it to the market, and I'm going to sell that stock at $100 a share. What I'm doing, though, is that I'm betting that the shares of that stock, the value of those shares, will go down. because I'm going to sell them at $100 a share. But then when Elizabeth says, hey, James, can I have that stock back? I have to give her the number of shares that I borrowed. I don't have to give her the cash value. If I borrowed 10 shares, I have to give her 10 shares back. So what I can do then is I can sell them for $100. And if those shares, if the value of that company then goes down and say they're only $80 now, when I have to give them back to Elizabeth, I buy them off of the market for $80. So for each one of those shares, I've made $20. So I borrow 10 shares, I sell them for 100, I buy them back for 80, and then I give them back to Elizabeth. So Elizabeth doesn't care what happened because she lent me 10 shares and I've given her back 10 shares. She's probably charged me a little fee, but that's okay. She made money, I made money, we're all happy. What happens though, is sometimes people borrow shares of stock. So I go to Elizabeth and I say, hey, can I borrow, I want to borrow 100 shares of stock. And right now they're worth $100 a share. And she says, sure. So I take my 100 shares and I go to the market and I sell them for $100. But once I sell them, the price goes up. So now for every share of stock that I have borrowed, I'm losing money. So if I have to buy them back now at $125 a share, I've lost $25 a share for $25 a piece for every share that I've borrowed from Elizabeth. She doesn't care. That's not her problem. I borrowed 100 shares. She expects 100 shares back. And she still expects a small fee. And that's shorting stock. So as the short seller, I'm placing a bet that the value of that company whose stock I'm trading is going to go down. And when we think about stocks that are probably going to lose value, we think of older companies, companies that have been around for a while, companies that sell a product that maybe we wouldn't want to buy anymore. Maybe if video games, think of video games. I own a new Xbox. I download a game when I want it. It doesn't even have a CD drive. So GameStop comes to mind. With streaming and being able to download games, not a lot of people have the need to go to a store that sells physical discs. So me as an investor or as a short seller, I'm going to say, hey, you know what? I bet GameStop is going to lose value. And that's what happened. A lot of people bought to short sell GameStop stock. The problem is retail investors have been around since the stock market has been around. What's new is the internet and the ability for retail investors to communicate and network. So never before has there been a place, there might be a small town investing club and 10 of us, 12 of us can get together and kind of pool our money and pool our investments. But with Reddit and the Wall Street Bets subreddit, if you've heard of Wall Street Bets, that's a place where literally millions of people across the world got together and said, hey, they're short selling GameStop. And also, if we look at the demographic of the retail investor, we see that they're mostly millennials. So I'll tell you, I have very fond memories of GameStop. And to me, that's a company that, I don't have any real sentimental value to, but if someone says, hey, do you want them to go out of business or not? I'm going to say no. So that's essentially what happened. Everyone got together, a large number of retail investors got together, and instead of having the power of one person, they had the combined power of millions of people. So my 10 shares by itself, if a hedge fund is short selling a stock, and I see they're short selling and I run out and I buy 10 shares, it's not going to drive the price up. But if 100,000 of us each own 10 shares, or we each own 100 shares, or maybe 10,000 of us that own shares, all run out and start to buy GameStop, it's going to drive the price up. And then those short sellers say, oh my gosh, the price is going up. We have to buy as much as we can, as quick as we can to cover our loss. And it creates a frenzy. And I'll tell you If you want the official synopsis of what happened, it's actually really good timing. Just last week, the SEC released a report. They're kind of the official post-mortem of what happened with the GameStop incident. And they say, yes, it's a short squeeze, but also, boy, things got crazy there for a minute. It's a short squeeze, but like we've never seen before because of the coordination of retail investors on social media. So people made a lot of money with GameStop. We saw it on the news every night there for a couple days. It drew a lot of attention, and people now who never ever before invested, much less people who never ever knew what a short squeeze was or short selling was, they know what these things are, and they know what they need to do to make it happen again, and that's what they're trying to do. So when we hear the term meme stock, we think of companies like GameStop, who, you know, I'm not making any judgment, but sells a product that, you know, is maybe going obsolete with digital services and streaming and downloads. They see a company like that that's been short sold, and they try to rally retail investors to jump in and create a short squeeze. So when we hear the term meme stock, we think of companies like BlackBerry. That's one that's constantly being talked about as a meme stock or an option for a short squeeze. Bed Bath & Beyond. I'll tell you, I think they just closed 300 stores nationwide. That's the kind of activity that short sellers look for. That's chumming the waters. Nokia is another one that's constantly being mentioned. I'll tell you, Nokia and BlackBerry were great. I was a big fan 20 years ago, 15 years ago. I think most people are probably surprised that they're still around. So that makes them kind of ideal for, hey, one, we can make a lot of money if we force a short squeeze, but also, isn't it kind of fun? Like, it goes against traditional investment knowledge and traditional wisdom that, you know, of all the stocks I could buy, I could invest in Amazon and Apple and Disney and Tesla. I'm going to invest all my money in Nokia. That's where the term meme stock comes from, is that it's kind of a counterintuitive way to invest. So short squeezing, again, is when a highly shorted stock rises in price, causing that frenzy so that short sellers can quickly cover their shorted trades. A forced short squeeze is when investors intentionally target these shorted stocks, which again is becoming much easier as networking and communications are becoming easier through social media, through Twitter, through Reddit, things like that. Short squeezes have been around again since the beginning of the stock market. One of the biggest was Piggly Wiggly. I have to ask, do you guys have Piggly Wiggly grocery stores in New York? I can't imagine you do. I know they're primarily a southern grocery store chain. Somebody just let me know in the chat. No, okay, I didn't think so. I'll tell you, a lot of my family is from Eastern Kentucky, Southeastern Kentucky, so I'm very familiar with the Piggly Wiggly stores. So in 1923, going again very far back, one of the biggest short squeezes in the history of the stock market. Investors saw the opportunity. They started to short the stock. The owner of Piggly Wiggly bought back all of the stock, worked to drive up the price. The problem was this was really the first short squeeze that the market had seen. And regulators didn't know what to do, so they halted trading. They halted trading of Piggly Wiggly, effectively killing the short squeeze. And kind of a sad story, the owner of the company, he was able to buy back every outstanding share of his supermarket, but it ended up bankrupting him. And that's kind of where the footing for future short squeezes has come into play, because they've said, hey, we can't, as regulators, we can't just step in and do this. It's a market, it's kind of a natural course correction. We have to let it play out. Those rules and norms were kind of set before retail investing took place, or became more popular. So we don't know what that will look like, but that kind of set the precedent all the way back in 1923 that, hey, this is a natural part of the market. We just have to let it go. We can't step in as regulators. In 2008, for one day, Volkswagen was the most valuable company on the planet. Volkswagen at the time was not doing so well. And they had a lot of short sells against them, a lot of investors shorting their stock. And then all of a sudden, Porsche came out and said, hey, we've secretly bought, we've quietly acquired 74% of Volkswagen, immediately causing the price of the stock to skyrocket. Everyone that short sold was scrambling to sell. It went from about $150 in that first day to about $300. And then in the second day, in the last 48 hours of the short sell, rose to about 1,000, converted to US dollars, about $1,100 per share. That was that's the most recent big short squeeze, and that's what people are looking for now. This was bigger than GameStop by volume, and this is what people reference in that, hey, we can take Nokia, that's worth, I think, about $5 or $6 a share, and we can make Nokia the most valuable company in the world. Granted, it's only going to be for a day or two, but we can drive the price up and then we can sell, because the short sellers have to cover their stock. Once you borrow the shares, you have to return them. There's no way around it. If you return them late, there are fines, there are penalties, there are fees, causing even more money to be lost. So not that a hedge fund can't cover it, but it has the possibility, depending on the number of shares shorted, to absolutely just decimate a hedge fund's value. So, I'm sorry?
There is a question in the chat box. Is this what happened to Doggy Coin?
With Dogecoin. A little bit. There's not, I think what we see with crypto and Dogecoin, and if you follow crypto, it's been a big 48 hours for Sheepcoin, which I if you don't know what I'm talking about, I'm sure this all sounds made up. But Dogecoin is a joke currency based on the meme of a dog. And then Sheepcoin is a joke currency based on the joke currency of Dogecoin. If you're familiar with the term turtles all the way down, that's kind of how cryptocurrency is explained, that it's just meme after joke after meme. But crypto, I think, is best compared to a pump and dump, if you're familiar with that term in the stock market. It's, again, something that's been around almost since the stock market. If Elizabeth buys a penny stock, and then she comes to me and she comes out here to everyone in the conference and she says, hey, I've got a hot tip on this stock. You guys should all go buy it. It's going to quadruple in value in the next week. So we all go buy the stock, but our frenzied buying drives up the price of the shares she already owns. And while we're buying, she's selling. So it's kind of a pump and dump. You can artificially inflate the price of something you own and then sell it. I see somebody just typed, mentioned Elon Musk. Elon was a big supporter of Bitcoin. Talked publicly about how you would be able to buy a Tesla with Bitcoin, drove the price up, got out, quietly bought into Dogecoin, and then started hyping that, became known as the Doge Father. When he hosted Saturday Night Live, he mentioned Dogecoin live on air. And I was watching him host Saturday Night Live as I watched a chart of the market on Dogecoin. And it was just all over the place. Every time he would say something, it would go up. Then he would make a joke about it, the price would fall. Mark Cuban is also a big cryptocurrency investor. So those, I think, I know that's a little off track, but just to answer your question, I think those are similar to pump and dumps, which every penny stock scheme in the history of the stock market has been that. It's just fancier. when you call it cryptocurrency. So when we look at back to short squeezes, FOMO trading is a real thing. It's the fear of missing out. People saw it with GameStop. People maybe didn't know exactly what it was, but it was on the news. A lot of people were making money. I think we definitely see FOMO trading with cryptocurrency. It's imagine everyone wants to go back to, the mid 80s and buy shares of Microsoft. That's what people are thinking of. Everyone wants to be able to go back and invest in Google. And, I want to go back and invest in Amazon when it was just a bookstore. And people are seeing these, and I'll tell you, there's money to be made. My personal stance is I'm neutral on cryptocurrency. Short squeezes are market corrections. I'll tell you, I'm not here to say they're bad things. I will tell you on a very personal level, I don't invest in short squeezes and I don't invest in cryptocurrency. But I don't think they're necessarily bad things. I'll leave it at that. And that kind of lends itself to the next part I want to talk about, which is social media. Because we saw what happened with AMC in January, and it's happening now with we saw what happened with GameStop in January, and it's happening now with AMC, the movie theater stock. And I will share with you, they have a very interesting hashtag. They're calling it the mother of all short squeezes, which you can read it there on the screen, is I think a very interesting hashtag. I encourage you, if you're interested, if you want to learn more, if you want to take kind of a peek behind the curtain, get on Twitter, search the hashtag, and there is a real level of distorted thinking. This started in February, March, people flocking to AMC. It was about $6 a share at the time. I didn't look today. It peaked around $72 a share maybe a month ago. It's been fluctuating between 30 and 40 pretty consistently, but there's a common theme among people that are holding the stock, whereas you see either it's not a typo, it's hodling the stock, which is internet slang. Amongst this community, they call themselves the AMC Apes, which is a reference to the Planet of the Apes movie. If you're on Twitter and you see in the trending topics anything about apes, Ape Strong, Ape Army, AMC Apes, it's all related to AMC and forcing a short squeeze. There's a hedge fund, a Chicago-based hedge fund called Citadel. They are the #1 shorter of AMC stock. It started with some groupthink that, hey, you know what, we're going to buy it at $5. Everyone was on Twitter, and I'll tell you, this doesn't live on Wall Street bets like GameStop did. This is primarily a Twitter-driven crowd. Everyone was convinced that $1,000 floor is what everyone would tweet. That's the minimum, is that we're gonna drive this stock up to $1,000 a share. What we see now is people saying that it's a $500,000 floor, is that we're going to drive AMC stock up to $500,000 a share. The problem is that if we look at the total number of outstanding shares of AMC movie theater, and we multiply that by $500,000 a piece, that is more money than exists in the world, which is a problem when it comes to paying everyone. It's just not possible for it to hit $500,000 a share. I'll tell you, I live in a pretty busy part of Columbus, Ohio. Literally right across the street from me is an AMC theater. I go over there sometimes pretty regularly. I just went and saw the new James Bond. Great movie, great theater. I like AMC. I don't think, however, that company will be valued at more money than exists in the world. Personal opinion, again, not financial advice, but mathematically impossible. So if you look at, and this is where Obviously, just reading tweets does not provide a diagnosis of any kind, but you can search the hashtag every Friday, which is typically payday for people. You'll see people tweeting about how they, it's payday, I was able to buy 10 more shares. I'm going to push off buying refilling my prescription until next payday so I can buy a couple more shares of AMC because it has dipped, the price has dipped. And looking at it, most investors would look at a loss like that and try to figure out a way to maybe recover some loss. They call it a sale. AMC stock is on sale. We didn't lose money today. We're lucky. We're so lucky we have the opportunity to buy it because it's on sale. So there is some real cognitive distortion around AMC stock. And people will post screenshots to kind of get cred in the ape community. Someone who is influential in the community, someone with a lot of followers on Twitter, posted that they literally took out a second mortgage on their home and used 100% of that fund, of that money, to buy AMC stock. What is different here, what we're seeing that's different between AMC and GameStop is that GameStop saw what was happening and their executive management team came out, put their hands up and said, hey, please don't bankrupt our company. You're doing very dangerous things with our stock and our bottom line. We don't want any part of this. What AMC's CEO is doing is getting on Twitter and hyping up the ape army. He communicates with him. If you tweet him, he'll write you back. He started a program for investors. You can download the AMC Investor app, and if you are an investor, you get free popcorn when you go to the theater now. He is doing a lot to hype this up. Now, the benefit to him and the benefit to AMC is the more they drive this stock up, being an executive management team with stock options, they can sell some of that stock, which is exactly what they did. The whole idea being that we don't want the people that have shorted our stock to be able to buy it. Okay, that's the whole idea of a short squeeze. He kind of betrayed, and there was a lot of emotion in the ape community when it came out that 4 executives from AMC, following a 400% rise in their stock price, they sold $3 million worth of stock. You want to guess who bought it? Citadel, the company that was shorting the stock. The CEO gifted each of his 2 sons $250,000 shares. And then he went to investors and said, hey, I want to put this to a vote. I would like AMC to be able to issue another 1 million+ shares of stock. And it had to go to a vote, had to go to the shareholders for a vote. I don't know that that has been released yet, but based on the, I don't know the official vote tally had been released yet, but based on the general consensus of social media, it was going to be summarily voted down. Again, we want these shares to be scarce because we want to drive the price up. Selling stock, issuing new shares does the exact opposite of what we want to do. So ultimately, the CEO and the executive management team, they were loyal to the company. They were loyal to the bottom line. But it's still happening, still going on. Search the hashtag. Friday is coming up. I'm sure there will be some interesting activity on Twitter. So it's kind of a peek behind the curtain. Last thing I want to talk about very briefly, because these are being considered investments, are NFTs. Not asking if you know what it stands for. If you do, that's great. But just in the chat box, let me know, have you ever heard of an NFT? Okay, yeah, I'm seeing some yeses, some nos. Thank you, Ashley. Non-fungible tokens, absolutely right. So let's talk about what these are, and because they are being considered investments, and they are also, I think, definitely an emerging trend in the problem gambling world. that as service providers we should be aware of. So quickly, something that is fungible means that it can be tradable. There is something that I can replicate that is almost an exact replacement in value. The best example is the US dollar. If I have $1 and Elizabeth has $1 and there's nothing special about them, there's no misprints or anything like that to give them any special value, Elizabeth and I can trade those dollars and we have the same value. We have nothing lost to either of us. Non-fungible tokens are kind of a mix of both value and personal preference. I think a great example of non-fungible tokens would be an airline seat. Elizabeth and I can have a ticket on the same plane, going to the same place, leaving the same airport on the same carrier, except I like an aisle seat. Elizabeth likes a window seat. I like a seat in the front of the plane. Maybe she likes a seat in the back of the plane. I can't imagine who would possibly like a middle seat, but maybe there's someone who likes a middle seat on an airplane. All of those things, because of our personal preference, have different value. So I'm willing to pay more for the front seat. Elizabeth likes the back seat. All personal preference. Children traveling with a parent. Fair enough. So those things have different value to us. And there's no one for one. I can't take my ticket, even though it's the same airline, the same destination, even though it's almost identical, we can't trade those for identical value. They're not an even swap because of tiny differences in our personal preferences. So that makes something non-fungible. We look at what is a non-fungible token. The best way to describe it is that it is digital art, a digital work of art that has nothing of comparable value that exists on the internet. Think of it as owning a copyright, or I think a good example is the Mona Lisa. I can Google the Mona Lisa, I can see a picture of the Mona Lisa, I can download a picture of the Mona Lisa, I could put a picture of the Mona Lisa in this PowerPoint presentation. I don't, however, own the rights to the Mona Lisa. So NFTs can be audio files, they can be music, they can be spoken word, they can be graphics, they can be a number of things. We can look at them online, but we don't own them. We don't own the rights to that. And where this comes into the gambling world, and you can see this is one of the NFTs that became very popular. This sold for, truly in real life, sold for $69.3 million. This is one of those things that I can explain the how, but not the why. In art, there's no accounting for taste. I've got some Cincinnati Reds artwork behind me to a room full of people in New York. That's probably not very valuable. To me, I enjoy it. I have behind my couch on the other wall a giant wall-sized portrait of the Cincinnati skyline and the Ohio River. Again, to you, you probably wouldn't give me half of what I paid for it. So again, accounting for taste, but it's the digital ownership of these things. And I'm going to close this screen here, and I know we've got to wrap up. I'm going to stop this share, and I'm going to switch briefly to my web browser, because we are seeing NFTs issued by places like DraftKings now. And we can look at some of the NFTs they're offering, and we can see autographs. Tom Brady, Simone Biles, Derek Jeter. Again, a room full of people in New York. You guys probably have stronger feelings about a Derek Jeter NFT than I do. But again, to each their own. And these are digital autographs. So what happens is that basically, and I think of my time as a clinician, every time I had a client sign electronically on the little pad connected to my laptop, we can go to Derek Jeter and say, hey, sign this electronic pad 50 times. We're going to sell 50 Derek Jeter NFT autographs. And these are being looked at as investments. Just like sports memorabilia, if you bought someone's home run baseball or, a collectible sports card. But because these are all online, they're being traded more commonly through apps like, we see DraftKings, but also Coinbase, if you use that for crypto investing. Robinhood is supposedly going to start getting into the NFT market. So these are not investing in that traditional sense, but definitely worth, I think, at least bringing up, opening that door in a presentation on investing and emerging trends. Definitely worth just throwing out there what they are, so you're aware of the terms. So if you hear it, you're not completely caught off guard. So I will go back to my PowerPoint, only because I've got some contact information there. And I will, we've got a few minutes for questions if anyone has questions. Otherwise, feel free to reach out to me. Super easy to get a hold of. I don't know what that says about me, but feel free to email. I love chatting about this stuff. Feel free to email, give me a call when I'm in the office. We can talk about emerging trends. We can talk about crypto. We can talk more about NFTs or retail investing, whatever floats your boat. So I will, if there are any questions, we'll field those. If not, I know it's 9 o'clock. I can't believe there are still 100+ people in the room. I am not only impressed, but incredibly grateful. I know after 1.5 years, we are all Zoomed out. So at this point, if we are attending something on Zoom, it is because we really find it interesting. And that is not something I take lightly, that you would give me your time. So I do appreciate it, and appreciate Elizabeth and everyone else there in New York for the opportunity.